Kevin?
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Throw these on here. You'll be able to hear me a little better, probably.
Oh, wow, much better.
Oh, there we go. Crystal clear, right? We got some beats in the background going on here, too, at Manifest.
Right.
So it's Vegas, I guess, it's pumping, right? So you are VP of Robotics over at Körber Supply Chain, right?
That's right.
So tell us a little kind of just overview of what Körber is for people that are not familiar.
Yes, awesome. Thanks, Kevin. So Körber Supply Chain is most known for its WMS applications, right? Well, it's a large organization that simplifies it down. We're with Körber Supply Chain software.
Yeah.
So what we do is we provide end-to-end software, supply chain execution technologies, largely in the software space, warehouse management, labor management, warehouse control, order management, transportation management, things that end in MS for the warehouse.
All those great acronyms that
great acronyms that we love so much. And then we're also the world's largest integrator of voice technologies. And then I lead up our mobile robotics business practice, which when you think about the way in which the organization is constructed, right, my robotics business is with the supply chain software business.
Right.
We also have a supply chain automation practice.
Okay.
So we view the mobile robotics business area as very tightly aligned to the software business. If you think about it, prior to joining the organization, I've been an industry analyst with IDC.
Okay. Spent
a lot of time talking to the folks like High Jump, Manhattan, Yonder, etc. And I had the hypothesis that, well, not really a hypothesis, it was pretty clear that with the growth of mobile robots, those robotic companies were going to be seeking out the customers of the WMS companies, so build a practice.
Right.
And prior to the Körber, rebranding, it was High Jump, and they said, "You want to come build it with us?" So I lead that practice, but all things supply chain execution in the warehouse.
Yeah, very interesting, and I think it's such an important point, right? Because we look at the robotics that are out there, right? But the robotics themselves are only as kind of strong and effective as the software that's behind them, right? So, and being able to drive that intelligently. So tell us kind of a little bit from your perspective and your research too, from your experience. I mean, how important is it to have kind of the softwares be able to align with the hardware at the end of the day, which essentially is what the robots are, right?
Yeah, that's critical.
Yeah.
Right. Putting my former analyst hat on, I would use the line constantly when I was speaking at events like this that, anybody can go out there and get the components to build a mobile robot at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Who cares if it can go from point to point? That doesn't add really any value. There needs to be data-driven alignment to the operation itself. And, more than that, we're seeing the most successes with those solutions that are most dynamic, right? That aren't, point to point is important. But there's scale in being able to deploy broadly into a warehouse. And broadly in a warehouse isn't dynamic, right? Isn't point to point, it's more dynamic. So the software layer has really been identified as that critical component that's driving the success and the folks that have really evolved to become those market leaders.
Yeah, I think it's so important because it's so interesting too, and I mentioned this a couple of times today, but if we you look around, you come to the Manifest, you come to the Modex or the ProMat, and you see the robots, right? They jump right out at you. They're cool, right?
They're everywhere,
right? But it's so important to understand, I think, foundationally that system needs to be in place to be able to make those things happen and make them move the way they do and be intelligent about it, whether you have a fleet or just a couple, to be able to coordinate with each other and have that overall orchestration all together. So I'm curious, as we talk about and as we just touched on, there's certainly, you said they're all over the place, like robots, automation. What kind of is the most interesting technology out there to you right now? What's kind of grabbing your attention this year?
Well, for me, it's still mobile robotics, largely because of the market opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot out there about artificial intelligence and
the
evolution of AI-driven applications, and I think everywhere you look, that's the new AMR, right? That's the thing that's being applied everywhere, and it has been, right? AI has been in mobile robotics now for years, right? If you think about their ability to leverage their sensors to see and sense where they are in real time and make an operational decision based on what they know and the environment around them, that's artificial intelligence embedded into those tools. But we're seeing that sort of functionality extend across, especially in the warehouse, different applications that are allowing, positive outcomes faster. And I think that's really the driving force behind the growth in AI in the space is how do you improve the outcome, but do it in a faster way, right? And when we look at mobile robots, going back to what, the question you asked, what's most exciting today?
Yeah.
The challenges that that technology is solving for is only solved in a small percentage of warehouses, right? And oftentimes people think, robots are a tool designed to replace human labor.
Yeah.
They're a tool designed to augment human labor, by and large. Mobile robots in the warehouse, right? There is an impact because they're doing certain tasks. But when you look at the percentages, it's single digits in terms of number of warehouses that have deployed mobile robots into them. So there's still a lot of growth opportunity, and I think one of the things that's really exciting for me is that it's a technology that's not available only to the enterprise, right? There's implications, very positive implications for the SMB market.
Right.
So that I think creates that excitement level for me that it's not just, the megaliths that have access, that it's providing value to smaller operations.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you touched on that too. I mean, how do you think kind of the market itself is changed a little bit? I mean, how does it kind of? It almost seems like to me that there's been a realization in a little bit that that barrier to entry needs to be lower for these small to medium size, as you mentioned. I mean, how have you seen kind of the market landscape change, and how is the market kind of shifting to be able to kind of penetrate that market and be able to get in there with the small to medium sized guys?
That's a great question. And again, going back to my previous life here, one of the reasons in which I thought a particular robotic vendor and those similar Locus Robotics were ripe for that market, right? The barriers to entry traditionally are cost, complexity, and perception.
Yeah.
Right? The automation's too expensive. It's bolted to the ground, and we need flexibility at the SMB level. The problem is the challenges that we're solving for, especially labor, labor-related, labor availability, and reliability and quality. A negative event for an SMB can be catastrophic, whereas for an enterprise, it's an itch that has to be scratched, right?
Right.
So the investment in the technology has been more critical, in my opinion, to some of those businesses that are facing the same challenges. It's just the impact of a smaller scale event can be bigger.
Right.
And so with the emergence of the robot as a service implementation model, the availability of this technology for the SMB became readily available, and the cost implication almost negligible, because you're able to recognize a cost savings and an incremental approach, and apply those savings to the cost of standing something up, and that cost not being in the seven figures, being in the very low six figures.
Right.
So you're even an SMB is achieving payback periods in 6 months or better at times, and so that addresses the cost problem.
Yeah.
Right. The complexity problem is bigger, but again, if you can deploy a technology in 3 months, is there really a complexity issue, or is it a perceived complexity issue?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so we're working with a lot. In fact, half of my customers as Körber Supply Chain that are using mobile robots in their operations that they've had purchased, implemented, and supported through us are our SMB customers.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we're seeing great successes there, and the benefits to those customers is quite significant, and is enabling them to grow and scale faster than there's other SMB competitors that haven't done the same, and aren't getting the same sort of benefit. So it's a great marketplace to be playing, especially in the mobile space today.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's such a great breakdown there of how they can kind of, approach that, and how the market is shifting there. And it's great to hear too that you're working with a decent amount of the small and medium-sized businesses there to be able to find those benefits from a mobile robot perspective, which I think they're great, right? But from the perspective of we'll say overwhelming right, amount of options that are out there in the market now. I mean, we have, we're here at Manifest, we see some of them here. We're going to be at Modex in a month, right?
Yep.
And you're going to walk in that door and you're just going to be like, oh my God, right? There are so many robot options here. What's your advice for how to kind of navigate that and figure out, like, where should I even start?
Yeah, great question. And to your point, right? You go back to ProMat 2017.
Yeah.
There were maybe 3 mobile robotics vendors in the back of the room.
Yeah.
ProMat 2019, I mean, they were at the front of the room and they were everywhere, right?
Yeah.
The market's really exploded very quickly, and the next time we talk, we'll talk about the reasoning and how that sort of occurred. But yeah, that's a big question, and one of the reasons I chose to join the organization that I did. When I first started with the organization, that guys, we want to help customers identify the best fit solution, not any fit solution.
Yeah.
Right? Because you go to these shows and you see a company say, that's really cool. You run a tabletop pilot, you show, some productivity improvement and say, yeah, let's go do that. And you deploy it, and then you meet another vendor the next day and they say, well, we can do that better, and you can get 100% productivity improvement. And
Right.
you have to make sure that you're making the best decision for the company. And so, that's where we play a lot in being advisors in what we do, being experts in the space. At Körber Supply Chain, we're not, we're not OEMs. We don't make robots. We've got a portfolio of partnerships with leading vendors in the space. And when we're talking to customers, we're looking to identify budgetary constraints, operational constraints, objectives, growth, things of that nature in a consultative manner, to be able to help customers understand, here's what this solution looks like, here's what solution B looks like, and here's what solution C looks like operationally and budgetarily, and how that aligns with your business. So I think the easy way to answer that question is to take support in the market from folks that have done it, right? It doesn't have to be a, independently driven endeavor.
Yeah.
Right. And that said, the market's very educated these days.
Right. Yeah.
5 years ago, we were a leading voice, right? We were actively promoting robotics to folks, and they'd never heard of them before.
Yeah.
Today, somebody in most organizations has been to a show and has seen a litany of different vendors and has an idea of what they think works. The challenge is when that idea manifests itself into a vision.
Right.
And if that idea is not accurate for whatever reason, right, that robot's format is too small, it can never support our volumes. Well, if you think differently and you break up your orders differently, maybe it does, right? And how do you make the right decision without, by reducing the risk? How do you reduce the risk and drive the right decision for the best fit? But again, it's eyes open, being willing to think differently. I used to like to think the idea was to whiteboard it, draw it out. If you could do it, how would it look? And then what's out there to support that vision? Whereas in the past, right, it used to be, especially in software, define your process and then find the technology that fits your process.
Right.
Now we can throw that out the window, draw out what we want our process to look like,
right,
and then go find the pieces that fit it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point there at the end, because it is now like there's so many options out there and so much flexibility and things that you can do with the technology and solutions out there to, like you said, just say like, all right, well, this is what we want the process to look like, so let's go make it happen. And I think there's so many companies that can help you to do that. And I love that you said, it doesn't have to be an independent endeavor, right? Like, you want somebody that can help you, that knows the space, that can be a partner in that sense and get you through kind of that journey. Because I think too, you see sometimes where maybe they made the wrong choice, like you said, on a robot or investment in automation, and then it leaves kind of a bad taste in the mouth, right? And they don't want to necessarily continue, or they're hesitant to continue to try and keep doing those types of things. So very, very interesting to talk to you here, John, and I really appreciate you coming by and giving us all this kind of insight and knowledge here on the robotics space. We'll definitely be looking forward to talking to you in the future as well. If people are interested in learning more about Körber or getting in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Easy places to check us out at Körber-supplychain.com. or stop by our booth here at Manifest and pick up a card, and we can catch up later.
All right, great. So John, thank you so much for coming by, and really appreciate you dropping this knowledge on us.
Appreciate it, Kevin. Have fun.
All right, thank you, John.
Show.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the rest of the show.